Lindsey Vonn defied every rule of logic just by standing in the start house on February 8, 2026. Cortina d'Ampezzo's legendary Olympia delle Tofane course promised to host the most impossible return the athletic world had ever witnessed. Everything aligned for a spectacle of epic proportions. Under pristine azure heavens and atop ice-injected terrain, a massive legion of fans held their breath, wondering if a 41-year-old icon running on a titanium joint and zero left ACL could dethrone the planet's elite. The grandstands vibrated with tension, even drawing global superstars like Snoop Dogg to the front row. Alan Kildare watched his daughter, his expression a haunting blend of immense pride and paralyzing fear. As Vonn exploded from the gate in bib 13, the Italian spectators erupted into a thunderous, ear-splitting ovation. They honored a warrior who had sacrificed blood and bone to these peaks for 2 decades, and she attacked the course with pure, savage intent. Within 10 seconds, she clocked velocities that would trigger a speed trap on the interstate, appearing both dangerously aggressive and rock solid. For a fleeting moment, the miracle seemed real, until the 13-second mark, when a hush fell over the entire mountain. Approaching Gate 4, she wavered mere inches off her line, a fatal error when traveling at 70 miles per hour. Her arm snagged the panel, the recoil violently wrenching her torso just as she launched into the air. Instantly, she went limp, her skis twisting sideways against the direction of travel in a horrifying display of physics gone wrong. She slammed into the ice on her right flank with a bone-chilling impact, careening uncontrollably down the pitch, leaving a void of sound far deeper than a simple pause and applause. A vacuum of shock gripped the Dolomites, suspending the competition for more than 10 agonizing minutes. Emergency crews swarmed the slope, the quiet broken only by the ominous beat of a yellow medevac chopper lowering from above. The world questioned whether this was the ultimate display of grit or a tragic overreach by the bionic woman of skiing. Comprehending those 13 seconds requires examining the 9 harrowing days preceding the event. Bluntly put, Vonn had no medical business being on that start list. 9 days prior in Crans-Montana, Switzerland, she endured a wreck brutal enough to permanently retire any other athlete. Her MRI read like a casualty report, a complete tear of the left ACL, severe bone contusions, and shredded meniscus cartilage. An average person faces immediate surgery and half a year of rehab with that diagnosis. For a pro, it spells retirement, yet Vonn has never accepted the limits of mortal physiology. She navigated that week fueled by pure, unfiltered rebellion against reality. As doctors murmured about negligence, Vonn was already grinding in the weight room. Social media feeds showed her blasting heavy squats and plyometrics on a joint that was biologically structurally unsound. A heavy-duty carbon fiber brace served as her external ligament, forcing her quads and hammies to compensate for the missing stability. Upon touching down in Cortina, she wasted 0 time getting to business. Her training runs weren't just survival tactics, she dominated, clocking the 11th and 3rd fastest times against the field. At 41, she demonstrated that her willpower far outstripped her anatomy, telling the press, "If I can ski, I will ski." Pushing the envelope is who I am. Downhill is inherently risky and nothing is guaranteed. But I won't live with what-ifs. She banked on her track record, having conquered this specific peak 12 separate times. Having memorized every undulation and shadow, she wagered that instinct would hold up where her body might fail. Breaking down the replay frame by frame reveals the brutal truth. 13 seconds transformed a fairy tale return into a nightmare scenario. Vonn launched with explosive power, slicing through the opening gates in a flawless tuck. Her velocity was incredible, but nearing the Tofane's first major air, her trajectory proved slightly too bold. Skiing without an anterior cruciate ligament destroys lateral stability. Lacking the trust to carve deeply, she attempted to engage early, causing her to wash out wide at gate 3. Desperate to salvage her line, she pinched the 4th gate too tight, clipping the pole with her shoulder. The gate didn't yield. It ensnared her arm, acting like a violent anchor. It yanked her right side backward while her left side continued hurtling forward at 70 miles per hour, generating massive torque. Hitting the kicker a split second later, she was already spinning, launching into the void completely sideways. In downhill racing, that position guarantees disaster, and she slammed onto the hard pack on her right hip. Cruelly, she impacted the side housing her titanium knee replacement from 2024. Her skis cutting across the grain didn't slide, they dug in instantly. Her skis violently torqued, launching her body into a brutal cartwheeling sequence of flips. The broadcast audio shifted instantly from the crowd's roar to a haunting silence. Vonn's agonized screams pierced the alpine air, audible all the way across the slopes. She wasn't merely injured, she was trapped. Mike's picked up her terrified pleas she couldn't release her bindings. A nightmare scenario for an athlete with knees already held together by surgical hardware. The ensuing 15 minutes unfolded as some of the most surreal in the history of the Winter Games. Jumbotrons cut to black. The music died. A swarm of 6 medics descended on Vonn's position high on the traverse. Stabilization had to happen right there on the sheer ice face before they could even consider transport. In the stands, her father, Alan Kildow, stared at his boots, unable to watch. Nearby, Snoop Dogg stood, frozen hands clasped behind his head. The duel with Sofia Goggia evaporated. Medal counts became irrelevant. The collective focus shifted entirely to survival. After 10 minutes of tense triage, the orange litter appeared. Given the technical severity of the terrain skiing, her down was impossible. They called in the winch. A helicopter hovered precariously close to the snow, lowering a medic on a cable. They strapped Vonn into the basket, secured the hoist, and initiated the lift. As she dangled beneath the rotors pulled into the fuselage of that yellow rescue bird, it felt like the curtain closing on an era. The greatest speed skier of all time wasn't crossing the finish line. She was being airlifted from the very mountain that defined her legend. Now the difficult inquisition begins. Did she belong in that starting gate? In the hours since impact, the debate has ignited. Former Olympic queen Tina Mays didn't mince words. She called the risk excessive. Medical experts are baffled that an athlete with a fully ruptured ACL was cleared for 80-mile-per-hour speeds. In most athletics, a doctor's word is law. But in the gladiatorial world of elite downhill medical clearance is a negotiation. If a racer passes a limb symmetry test and demonstrates sufficient torque to stabilize the joint, the final call often rests with them. Vonn cleared those hurdles. She survived the training runs. But functional stability in a lab is light years away from Olympic race forces. Vonn didn't show up just to participate. She arrived to dominate. And winning requires finding the razor's edge-cutting lines tighter than physics suggests. Did the injury dictate the crash? Certainty is elusive, but we know this skiing on a brace and a prayer leaves zero margin for error. When she hooked that gate, her body lacked the structural integrity to recover. She hit the physical limit. Was it a mistake? Ask Lindsey Vonn, and she'd likely reject the premise. To her, the only fate worse than an Olympic crash is sitting on the couch wondering, what if? While Lindsey Vonn was en route to a Milan trauma center, the competition rolled on. It concluded with the most bittersweet twist imaginable for the American squad. Breezy Johnson, Vonn's teammate and protégé, laid down a nearly flawless descent. She edged out Germany's Emma Eicher by a mere 0.04 of a second to seize Olympic gold. At the finish, Johnson collapsed in tears. Yet those weren't purely tears of triumph. She'd spent the prior 20 minutes watching her mentor, the architect of her career, being medevacked. Johnson spoke through a choked throat. I saw her drop. I knew it was bad. Lindsey is the reason I'm here. She's the reason any of us are here. I wanted this win for the team, but celebrating feels impossible when your hero is headed to the ER. It was a torch-passing moment carrying the weight of a Shakespearean tragedy. The veteran falls on her sword, so the successor can ascend the podium. Johnson's gold proves Vonn's killer instinct was infectious. We live in a culture obsessed with storybook endings. We wanted Lindsey Vonn to shatter the tape, grab a medal, and retire in a flurry of confetti. But real sports are rarely that tidy. Success in 2026 for Lindsey Vonn isn't found in a trophy case. It's found in the fact that a 41-year-old with a metal knee and a shredded ACL had the audacity to step into the gate. She took a sport designed to break bodies and made it her playground for 20 years. She took a medical diagnosis that would have sidelined a titan and treated it like a minor inconvenience. Lindsey Vonn didn't secure that final gold. But in those 13 seconds of raw defiance, she displayed something far more valuable than bullion. She showed that you hold the pen to your own story. She refused to let a crash in Switzerland define her exit. She chose the fight. She chose the risk. She chose the mountain one last time. Whether this marks the finale or just another chapter in her medical chart, the legacy is ironclad. Lindsey Vonn didn't just make the roster, she remade the sport in her own image. The rescue chopper has cleared the peak, and the anxious hush gripping Cortina dissolves into a roar of anticipation for Breezy Johnson. Yet the defining image is frozen in time, Lindsey Vonn bib 13 steel in her gaze, kicking out of the start house for her last stand. Because when the weight of the world lifts and you ride only for your own spirit, the slope finally yields. And for 13 glorious seconds, she owned it all.